goes again. Hello, it's Alan on both sides of the pond, and it's Saturday, the 27th of November. At what time's the local? It's just coming up to 8 a.m. 0800 hours. We've left Colorado. We're now in Utah, heading for St. George, Utah, and climbing up these big old hills in this very, 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 very striking and awesome landscape. Beautiful, I don't know if you call it beautiful, it's very barren and stark, but it's very awe-inspiring. It's, yeah, some beautiful views around here. Wouldn't like to lose my brakes on these upsy downsies. Been driving now for a couple of hours. Could have driven through the night. I actually completed my 10-hour break at about 2300 last night, but just didn't want to drive through here in the dark. There's no real hurry. I've got another load. Once I finish this one, I'm going to do a 34-hour reset in Vegas, and then go to Henderson, Nevada, which is just south of Vegas, to take a load through to Denver. So I'll just be coming back this route. But that doesn't deliver until Tuesday night at 2300, so I'm in no real hurry, no real rush. It's kind of a waste of my time, but what do you do? It's a steep old climb for sure. Typical Utah landscape. Did you spend a fortune in the sales yesterday, the Black Friday sales? I know I didn't. I bought myself a small pair of binoculars off Amazon to put in the truck for when I'm in places like this, to enjoy the scenery a little bit closer up and, you know, have a look at the wildlife. But nothing really spectacular. I'd rather put it in the bank and save up for retirement, because I'm getting old. Be that far away. Quite the view here. Sadly, you don't only get to see what's in front. The Black Dragon View area, 1/4 mile. So I spent last night at the Love's truck stop and bought a couple of things for the truck. Actually, on my reward points, got myself a new spinner for the steering wheel, some of the chrome nut caps, because I thought I'd lost one, so I bought a replacement, and I actually got two missing. That would be a nice place to spend the night, wouldn't it? That view area, there's a truck over there right now. That would be a pretty amazing place to spend the night. Watching the sun go down and watching the sun come up would be pretty neat there. There's a truck over there that I can see. It's an amazing view around here, which is pretty much like the Grand Canyon type view. Part of the same place. Yeah, there's a truck driver parked over there. He had a great view last night. But with my heavy load of Downy washing liquid, I am definitely feeling these hills. Come on, you can do it. I always like to put my hazard lights on if I'm going up in the States and I'm only doing 50 or less. I always put the hazards on. Let people know you've got a slow-moving vehicle. Also, when on the occasions where you have to pull out from a hard shoulder, pulling off a hard shoulder, put my indicators on, my hazard warning lights, until such point where I'm over 50 miles an hour, just to let the people know behind you that draw your attention to your vehicle, or draw their attention to your vehicle, to make sure that they can understand that it is going quite slow. Oh. Adaptive cruise disabled. Probably my sensors saw a hill or something like that, mistaked it with for a moving vehicle. See that rock over there? It thought it was a car. often does that with bridges. It's really annoying, and sometimes it brakes as well. It'll actually brake the truck, put the brakes on when you're going under a bridge because it thinks it's a stationary truck or car. Too many electronic safety devices on these trucks now. It would be better just to make the driving test harder and get better drivers. There's a current problem right now with truck drivers with retaining them, driver retention. It's a huge issue. A lot of drivers are leaving and not coming back to the industry because of the conditions that we sometimes have to deal with. You know, some of the poor pay conditions, the lack of overtime, the fact that we can sit there for 8 hours at a shippers and get no pay for it because the way the payments are structured, you're paid by the mile. So you go to a shipper and or if you're your own operator, you don't get paid anything, you don't get any layover or anything. You're stuck at a shipper for hours and they don't care, and you're earning not a penny. And there's a lot of drivers leaving the industry, and the answer that our government's come up with so far is to try and get more new truckers into the industry, when the answer really is to try and keep the ones that are already there. It's no good just getting loads of inexperienced, bad quality drivers, which is what's coming onto the market, let's be honest. A lot of poor, awful drivers. I had a guy, I pulled into a rest area for the night, and it was one of the diagonal drive-through parking spots. So you know, there's the truck to the left and the right, and there's one parking spot in the middle that I'm going to. So obviously I've got the articulated vehicle, this semi, so I overshot my parking space, then turned tight in. So the back wheels, you know, you've got to watch where the back wheels go so you don't hit the truck or the back of the trailer to your right, which is just the way you do it. There's no multiple different techniques you can use when you're in a limited space. You overshoot your parking space, then cut in. So a guy come up to me and he says, oh, you didn't mind me watching you, did you? And I says, no, not at all. Why? He says, oh, well, because I wasn't sure how to do that, so I was just watching your technique, and I like the technique you use. I'll have to use that. And I was kind of blown away by that. You know, that a guy's on the road and he doesn't know how to pull into a drive-through angled truck spot. That's kind of alarming, you know. I mean, these vehicles are deadly, and we're interacting with smaller vehicles and pedestrians and all kinds of other things, and we're just throwing anybody into them instead of trying to retain the truckers that are already here who are now leaving. They're just throwing loads of new ones, and that's definitely a mistake. We need to be trying to hold on to the truckers that are, you know, got years and years and years of experience, who right now are quite disillusioned. We got a lot of red tape tied up around us. You know, we have to have a lot of rules we need to abide by that other motorists don't, like four-wheelers. I mean, one of the crazy things is you see these old people who drive the big RVs, and they'll have a trailer on the back as well, a big trailer. You don't need a license for that. I mean, I went through extensive training for 3 weeks just to get through my test, and that's your basics, just to get you into a position where you are able to legally drive on the road, and it's not that difficult. And then I went to work for a company on a training pay, and sat with a trainer for, it actually turned out to be 9 weeks because of COVID, but it was only supposed to be 6, to get more training and get some experience and get to feel comfortable with the vehicle. Before I was let loose on my own, and even then I had to take another driving test to prove that, you know, I had the ability to drive around and I had the skills. But you got these people in these RVs, and it's like you don't need anything. You can have a kid, 17-year-old actually, who's just passed his tests and could drive about in one of those things. So, I mean, these trucks are dangerous. They're a lot harder to drive than cars. They react to bumps and roads and bends and inclines and declines completely different from normal vehicles or four wheels or small vehicles, whatever you want to call them. And it takes skill. It takes a lot of knowledge to be able to safely drive one of these things. I was reading an article the other day about this very road that I was on. An inexperienced driver in the mountainous regions burnt out his brakes. He used his regular brakes, his front brake, service brake, whatever you want to call it, too much going down the hills instead of using a low gear and or your Jake brakes, depending on if it was slippy or not, if it was raining or it was snow, and lost his brakes, and massive crash, loads of people killed, and that was basically a new, inexperienced driver. An older driver never would have done that, you know. I come through Vale yesterday and hardly used my brakes. Just did a little bit stab braking here and there on the 7% declines, but that was it. I could pretty much go the entire way down the hill without using my brakes. And that's the way it should be done. And it's nice to have your brakes that are completely cool should you need them in an emergency, rather than, you know, something that's just going to fade away. So, I mean, what do we do? What do we do to keep drivers that are currently on the road? What you've got to remember is what we're doing right now, it takes us away from our families. It's not perfect living. You've got to eat shit food. And I'm not complaining. You know, I chose to be here. I'm enjoying seeing the United States. So don't get me wrong. It's like, well, if you don't like it, leave. It's not the case. I enjoy my job. But I can understand why a lot of people are leaving. You know, pay's could be a lot better. We're taken away from our families. We're going to live in a little box. You know, it's you might get in a semi and look at it and say, oh, look at this, it's huge. But it's not really when you're living in it. It's like you imagine living in your closet. You're working in your closet. You're living in your closet. You're sleeping in your closet. You know, that's, you know, it's not easy conditions. And then you've got trying to find somewhere to park. And I've harped on about this loads of times, but it's a fact. Parking is atrocious, especially when you go to places like New York City or Chicago or Detroit. You go to Los Angeles, they've got places there like Ontario. There's a big TA and a Petro stopping centre there. There's 500 spots in each one, but it's $25 a night to park there. You know, you're getting scalped. So if you want to keep the drivers, give us good parking, give us decent pay conditions. Stop these fucking shippers, pardon the language, but you know, it really annoys me. Stop these shippers and receivers having us sat there for 8, 9, 10, sometimes days, you know, not earning any money. Restructure it so that they're not allowed to keep us more than 2 hours. And if they do, the shippers and receivers have to pay hefty fines. You know, I mean, currently people get, if you do get detention pay, it's like anything from $10 to $30, which is nothing, and that's after the first 2 hours. So let's make these shippers and receivers responsible. You know, if your shippers, if the guys that are working, the lumpers that are working in your place can't do it in 2 hours, the people who run the place should then be on their backs. There should be written warnings, should be firing people, should hire people who can do the job properly. I mean, how many truck drivers out there have sat there for hours and hours and hours, and you've observed these lumpers, these guys who are taking their cargo off the back of your truck or putting the cargo on your truck. Just